Please welcome Mary Lou Piland.
So there I was, sitting in my driveway, in my car, sobbing, when I saw my Uncle Dominic march across the lawn. He tapped on my window, lifted his shirt, pointed to his gun, and said, "If you bring shame to me or my family, I will shoot you and I will shoot Anthony." Rewind to the first time I ever saw Anthony. I was at Sacred Heart High School in the foyer, trying to convince my teacher, Miss Joe, to give me a few extra days on an assignment. And I felt this sudden gust of wind hit the back of my legs. And I turned around, and my eyes locked on the most gorgeous boy I had ever seen. Barely able to speak, I turned back around and said, "Miss Joe, who is that?" She said, "That's Anthony." And I looked at her and said, "I am going to marry Anthony someday." So I set to work. I convinced Miss Joe to give me a non-existent filing job in the guidance office, and I randomly came across his files. In an hour, I had memorized his class schedule, locker location, and locker combination. And often I would go and meet him, because I knew his schedule, as he was coming out of English class and say, "Hey, are you going to the dance Friday night?" And he would look at me like, "Who are you?" Or he'd be coming out of the cafe and I'd say, "Football game Saturday?" And the poor guy never knew what hit him. So we started to see each other and pass each other in the hallways, and I started to get a little bold. I went down to his locker one day and took his Egyptian musk oil and put it on my wrist so I could smell him throughout the day. Another time, I went down and borrowed his yellow cardigan. And as I was walking down the hall, he stopped me and he said, "Hey, that's a nice sweater. I have one just like that." And I was like, "I know." So I decided to bring my sister Nancy to meet him at the dance on Friday night. And I introduced them. And she agreed. She's like, "He is really, really cute. But why are you going to fall in love with him? You can't bring him home. He's black, and Dad would kill you." And in my heart, I knew she was right, but part of me hoped that she was wrong. So we danced and flirted for 2 years, and then Anthony told me he was going into the Air Force, and he was gone for 6 years, and we kept in touch. My grandmother would hide my letters that would come from him, because somehow she knew that something wasn't really right. So when he came home, we started going out, and we'd always have to go to movie theaters that were 3 towns away or restaurants that were 4 towns away, because I didn't want anyone to tell my dad that I was out with somebody who was black. So as we grew closer, he decided that he wanted to meet my Italian family, because that's all I did was talk about them. So I was like, "If you meet them, you're going to be stuck with me for the rest of your life." And he said, "It's the 90s. People aren't like that anymore." And I'm like, "My family is like that. They're crazy, off the boat, Italian, sausage stuffing, wine making, Catholic Italian family." So he's like, "No, I really want to meet them." So it took me about a week and a half, but I thought of a good plan. I'm going to take him to my dad's car wash, because I knew he'd never kill me in front of a customer. So I went. As we're driving to the car wash, I remember, first my heart was like in my throat. Then it was in my shoes. Then it was back in my throat. And I'm thinking, "Oh, Nancy's right. Nancy's right. What am I doing?" We get to the car wash. Anthony gets out of the car, and I introduce them. They shake hands. They start making small talk. And I step back and I say, "For once, Nancy was wrong." Now, to know my sister Nancy, she's my older sister, and she's the best listener in the world. She listens to everything my parents say. My dad loves to tell the story of how when my mother was pregnant with Nancy, he would put his hand on my mom's belly and just say, "Move," and Nancy would jump. And that's what I was up against. So after they met and they made small talk, I was so excited to go home that night because I thought, this is it. The secret is out. They're going to love him. We can go to Sunday dinners together. And I went home and no one would talk to me. And it was like December in April. It was so cold that I could see my breath in my house. So the next day I came downstairs and my dad was waiting for me at the kitchen table. It was serious. He said, "Is that your boyfriend?" I couldn't even say anything. He's like, "Sit down, we need to talk." And I remember thinking, where's the nearest exit? Because I'm going to have to make a run for it. So before I could even sit down, he said, "You know how we feel. It's him or us." And I looked at him and I said, "I love him. I will be out of your house by the end of the day." So I went upstairs and I started packing up my things. And I hear Nancy stomping up the stairs. She's mad. She walks into my room, grabs my perfume tray full of glass perfume bottles, and she's holding it. And she says to me, "You're really going to do this? You're going to break up this family?" And I said, "I love him." She took my perfume bottles and she threw them up against the wall, and all the glass shattered. Sobbing on the floor, I'm picking up all these pieces of perfume bottles, and I hear my aunt, Evelina, and my grandmother walk in the room. So I look up, and I held my hand up to my aunt, thinking she would lean over and help me up. And she leaned over, and she smacked me so hard across the face, and she said, "You are selfish and immature, and you are not going to do this to my sister." And my Nonna Maria started pulling her off of me, and she was pushing her out the door. And my Nonna turned around and she said, "Maria Luisa, ascolta al tuo cuore. Listen to your heart." And then she said, "Tutto nella vita è un misterio." Everything in life is a trade-off. So there I am, sitting in my car sobbing. And after my uncle threatens to shoot us both, he says, "And whatever you do, don't have kids." So I decided to move in with my girlfriend, Teresa, whose husband was a cop, because I thought that was a good move. And people kept visiting me like somebody died. Everybody was coming, trying to convince me to go back, trying to tell me this was a mistake. It was a fad. It was going to pass. But they didn't realize I stalked this man for 6 years. I am not going back without him. By the third day, my mom was so desperate, she gave Teresa a bottle of holy water from Lourdes in France, like a little Virgin Mary bottle, to pour in my coffee because she thought that I was possessed. So what my parents didn't know, though, was that Anthony is a really stand-up kind of guy. And he knew that I would never make it on my own by myself because I came from such a huge family. And he didn't want to live together. So he's like, "You know what? I think we should get married." So we went to Vermont and we got married. And 2 weeks later, my dad called and he said, "Listen, I'm stubborn, you're stubborn. We need to work something out because we need to have our family back." And he said, "I want to meet you." And I said, "All right." I said, "I'll meet you on Saturday." And he said, "All right, but before then, please don't do anything stupid." I said, "Dad, we got married." And I heard click, dial tone. And I said, "Oh, that was my only chance. That was it. Like, what am I going to do? I've lost my family forever." But Anthony had faith throughout this whole thing. He was the one that kept saying, "For Thanksgiving, we are going to be at your uncle's table. And I said, I don't think that's going to happen. So my sister called me about a month later. She said, you have to come home. We miss you. And I said to Anthony, do you want to go? And he said, of course I want to go. I said, I don't. It's a setup. It's an ambush. And so we went, and we were ambushed with food. Lasagna, meatballs, pasta. I think my mom cooked everything, every meal I missed for all those months was on the table. So after dinner, my dad said, I really would love to talk to you. And I said, let's talk. He said, he's a great guy. He's nice. I really like him. And I said, yeah, I know. He's like, but the Italian community is not going to accept this. It's not going to work. And I was like, Dad, they're not going to accept him if you don't accept him. It has to start with you. You have to make the change. And I think for once he got it, and it like something clicked. And I think now they like him more than they like me. And later that night, I was sitting on my grandmother's bed, and she was braiding my hair like she did before I went to school every day. And she said to me, my mother fell in love with a boy who wasn't Catholic. And her father said, no way. And she listened to her father. And she loved him her whole life and always thought where he was and if he had a family or even if he thought of her. And on her deathbed at 93 years old, she was calling for him. And she said, I wish he was here just to warm my feet because I'm cold. So she said to me, I'm so happy that you ascolta al tuo cuore. She said, because you always have to listen to your heart. And this will be our 24th Thanksgiving at my uncle's table. With our 3 boys, Anthony, Michael Anthony, Mark Anthony. And something that was supposed to tear our family apart has just brought more love into our family. And I know that my uncle and my father would lay down their life for my kids.